If you ask me what is the most disappointing plot in the world, it must be the revenge of blood for blood. And the sisters in this movie killed a creature in hell with their blood and courage. Although their revenge is not flashy enough, each step is precise and fierce, which makes people clap their hands. This revenge film may not be more fierce than other similar works in terms of scale and blood. But the sisters with distinct personalities use their unique way of revenge to make people feel particularly enjoyable and comfortable. The story begins with two young and beautiful girls embarking on a journey of social practice to a remote farm. They are college students who have just got rid of their parents' constraints and are full of curiosity and fantasy about the world. On the way, two handsome men take the initiative to be kind and offer to give them a ride. Faced with the good news of the pie in the sky, the short-haired sister agreed without hesitation, while the long-haired sister was a little hesitant. But she couldn't stop her sister's persuasion and followed the car. The car didn't drive long, but it deviated from the original route. They were full of doubts, but they were lightened by the two handsome men. As a result, the car finally stopped in a wooden house in the wilderness. The two sisters were worried, but at that moment, a kind old lady came out and welcomed them into the house with a smile. The old lady claimed to be the mother of the two brothers. Kind words and caring reception let the sisters' worries slowly let go. Unfortunately, the good scene didn't last long. After eating a few pieces of dessert from the old lady, the short-haired sister suddenly felt dizzy. She felt something was wrong, so she dragged her sister out. However, before she could run a few steps, she was caught up by the two brothers and was forcibly brought back to the house. When they woke up, they were locked in an iron box, and their hands and feet were chained to death. There was only a thin layer of clothing left on their bodies. It was only then that they realized that they had fallen into a carefully planned trap. The two cried out for help, but after the sound was heard, it was not the original hand that welcomed them, but the handsome brother's cold face. He smiled and told them, "This is the original forest. No matter how much you shout, no one will hear you." This made the two sisters even more panicked. Not long after, a bearded man in jeans appeared. As soon as he saw them, he angered the two brothers and took the initiative, and took out his cell phone to send a message of peace to the girls' relatives. But who would have thought that this message would become a life-saving straw? The girl's uncle was a retired police officer. He had already made an appointment with his two nieces. If everything is safe, the end of every day's message will have a special code. But this message has no code, and the self-reliance is also wrong. After the uncle was alert, he immediately set out to look for it. At the same time, the two sisters began to suffer non-human torture. A fat police officer suddenly appeared. They thought they had met a savior. As a result, this person was a partner of the human trafficker. Not only did he not save the person, but also took the opportunity to beat the girl. After receiving the benefits, he left. Then a man with a bad temper and curly hair broke into the container. He fell in love with the short-haired girl at a glance. Not only did he hit her on the foot, but also burned her skin with a cigarette. The sister was in pain. The sister cried and wanted to throw it over to stop it, but she could only look at it. She couldn't even struggle. What's worse, at 10 o'clock in the evening, a man with a pig mask suddenly appeared. He took the short-haired girl straight to the container. He didn't come back until 3 hours later. After the short-haired girl returned to the box, the whole person collapsed on the corner of the wall, trembling. The sister asked him if he recognized the other party. The sister said that the man was wearing a headgear, but remembered that the other party had a vertical tattoo on his arm. On the other hand, the uncle came to the police station in the town to report the case. It was the fat policeman who received him. The other party appeared to promise to assist in the investigation, but in secret, he informed the human trafficker. Knowing that the police had intervened, Huzinin decided to clean up the door as soon as possible. They planned to deceive the next wave of girls and then kill the sisters. Accidentally, their conversation happened to be heard by the long-haired girl. He knew that if he didn't run away at this time, he would really die. The next day, Huzinin took the two brothers out and only left the curled hair to guard the camp. The long-haired girl held back her disgust and took the initiative to tie her hair. The driver started, but the curly hair was not vigilant, and soon fell into the trap. The long-haired girl took the opportunity to relax, and bit her artery in one bite. The sisters finally got freedom. They took the key to unlock the lock, grabbed the curly hair's car, and took it all the way. On the way, they calmed down, decided not to leave like this, and had to make these human traffickers pay the price. So they turned into the town, walked into a hardware store, bought hammers, electrons, and iron wire. The two set up a trap and prepared for a bloody fight. Many people are arguing whether the victims are qualified to take revenge. But when you see what these sisters have experienced, you may think that the law is not enough. They are not born to be cruel, but are pushed to the edge of the abyss. When they finally escaped from the abyss, they did not choose to call the police, but took their own weapons and found their own dignity one by one. The first unlucky one is Huzinin. This wild beast with human skin used to be the #1 commander on the chain of trafficking. He thought he was a hunter, but he didn't expect to become a prey sooner or later. When the sisters found him, he had no idea that the god of death had opened the door with his face. Without further ado, the sisters first hit him hard, picking up the fire on his face. The baseball bat with nails hit his bones one by one. But the two sisters didn't plan to let him go like this. This is just a warm-up. Then Huzinin was tied to the table, like a wild boar with a head. He begged for mercy, saying he was willing to pay for his life. The sisters were also happy, with long hair and beautiful eyes. He handed over the hidden secret corner, and unexpectedly got a gun. Obviously, this kind of person is ready to die for evil. Unfortunately, he bet on the wrong opponent. This time he didn't meet an ordinary girl, but a revenger who crawled back from hell. The sisters picked up the toy they had prepared for a long time, and completely destroyed the man's last pride. By the way, they also took his life away. After the calculation was completed, they had no hesitation, and immediately locked on to the next target. That's the handsome brother who pretended to be passionate about the two sisters. Passing by a church, they accidentally found a proper cross on the arm of the good father. The short-haired girl looked at him. That night she remembered clearly that this man was wearing a pig's head mask, and did something unforgivable to her. The church became a battlefield. The godfather was still holding the shelf at first, but when the short-haired girl pulled out the familiar baseball bat, he was finally panicked, but it was too late. The sisters attacked him together, tied him to the back of the car, and dragged him all the way to the gas station. They poured gasoline on him and sent him to hell. They also washed away the misunderstanding in the heart of the long-haired girl. Their anger burned like wild grass. The more they burned, the more fierce they were. The next stop was the fat policeman who hid the most and looked the most harmless. This man is the one they shouldn't let go of. On the other side, the fat policeman was playing Tai Chi, fooling the girl's uncle, saying that he would definitely set up a case and do his best. But the sky is not as good as the man. But the uncle was so close to the light, and he made a phone call to his niece. The ringtone was heard in the pocket of the fat policeman. At this moment, the uncle understood everything. He is the one who controls everything in the dark. Unfortunately, he didn't have time to call the police, and he was pinched by the other party and dragged home. Tied to the chair, the fat policeman thought he had time to play with the new prey. In the end, Nach and Xiang stood outside the door with the two murderous girls. This time they didn't plan to give the other party any chance. Sneaked into the house quietly. The light in the house was dim. The fat policeman was making a phone call to arrange the next prey. When he heard the movement behind him, there was a steel stick in front of him. Faced with the inhumane devil, the law is sometimes too gentle. Only the price of blood can be exchanged for real fairness. This is not bragging, but talking about a pair of sisters who have been insulted and hurt. How to uphold justice in a world without retreats in the most extreme way. When the fat policeman turned around, he found himself tied to the chair. The pair of familiar and fearful eyes stared at him. It was the two girls he had played with, insulted and betrayed. He apologized subconsciously, but the two sisters had no expression on their faces, obviously not to apologize. The long-haired girl suddenly spread her arms, laughing at him to guess which hand was hiding the bullet. The fat policeman was already scared to death, so he chose the left side. And the short-haired girl dared not show weakness, and let him guess which hand had the match. He pointed at the 5 matches in his hand. The mystery was solved. It was just a life-and-death game. A bullet went into the left wheel. The next 5 shots were all about luck. Every time the gun was aimed at his head, it was like the god of death was drawing a line. Fortunately, he didn't die. 5 shots were all missed. He was about to relax, but the next second, the long-haired girl stopped playing. A shot sent him to see the fat policeman. The reunion between the villains is also a reunion. But it's not over yet. The sisters knew that the real hero of this nightmare was the family of the 3 mouths. The 2 brothers and the kind mother with a mask. The old lady was still drinking red wine leisurely. She didn't realize that it was over. What she drank was not wine, but the drug she made. When she woke up, she was already tied to the wheelchair. The remaining alcohol in her mouth became cold sweat. What made her collapse was that her son was hanging on the beam. There was only a book at the bottom of her feet. The old lady was finally panicked. She kept begging for mercy. She said that as long as she could let her son go, she would promise anything. But she underestimated the hatred of the 2 girls and also overestimated her own mouth. She kicked over the book, and her son fell directly. The 2 sisters took 1 step at a time in front of her, and beat her to a pulp. The old lady looked at this scene with tears in her eyes. She cursed the 2 sisters, saying that her eldest son would definitely avenge her. As a result, the 2 sisters laughed coldly and pushed her into another room. They only saw that her eldest son had already been tied to the ground and was unconscious. The sisters did not plan to deal with her immediately, but played a psychological war. They made a cruel condition to this brother. They killed their mother, and they let her go. The man who lied to them about getting in the car collapsed on the ground and kept kowtowing for mercy. He said it was just a moment of confusion, but there was no time to wait for him to wake up. A gun shot him. It was not a soft heart, but a more important arrangement. They wanted to use this corpse to create a scene of internal confusion and disorder. The house was carefully arranged as if it were a gang fight. A son killed the whole family, and finally committed suicide for his sin. The old lady saw that her 2 sons were gone like this, and her spirit completely collapsed. She cried bitterly, but the instinct of survival made her willing to take out all the money and only ask for a living life. The sisters naturally did not refuse the money. Anyway, this is a remuneration, but taking the money does not mean sparing their lives. They picked up the haystack, and sent the old witch who was selling drugs to the netherworld. After all the dust settled, the girl's uncle finally showed up. He used his detective identity to testify for his 2 nieces, and persuaded the judge to pardon their behavior. He was not covering up, but making up for this system. Let justice really come to fruition. And the 2 sisters can finally use the money of the enemy to set foot on a global journey. They are not running away, but looking for the future. But at the end of the film, the picture cuts back to the original starting point. Those ads that are still posting social practice organic farms on the side of the road are still pushing a group of girls into the abyss. This movie is not only the blood-stained revenge scene that touches people the most, but also the transformation of girls from prey to hunters step by step. They are not born to be cruel, but after experiencing the dirtiest side of humanity, they are forced to a dead end. The director used an extreme way to tell a not unfamiliar reality. In a place where the system lacks justice, some people can only rely on themselves to pull out the knife and save themselves. This is not encouraging violence, but reminding us that the law cannot be defiant, and the system cannot be indifferent. Because when kind people no longer have a way out, they will turn into wolves. And their anger is not just a revenge for the perpetrators, but also a fight against the whole society. This is not a cool movie, but a scene. Maybe the next girl who walks into the abyss hasn't realized that she is leaving the sun. But I hope that before she really falls, we have begun to change this world.